Hello, how is it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask me anything about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. Politics is a real fucking weird and complicated thing to try to keep track of, and so I like to make myself available to y'all 5 days a week to answer your questions about politics. And you can be assured that there will not be any judgments or roasting or arguments about your question. I know that there are some questions that people have out there that they're worried, oh, if I ask this, I'm going to end up getting into a fight with people, or people are going to think I'm a MAGA person, or they're going to think I'm a libtard person, or maybe they're going to think I'm just like uninformed, generally uneducated, not smart. You don't have to worry about any of that on this live stream. I'm not here to fight. I am not here to debate. I am just here to answer all of your questions, your good faith questions about politics. I got an errant hair here. Does that work? I look a little bit better, I guess. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. Everybody is welcome here, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or anything in between or on the edges. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions. So if you're like a MAGA person and you vote and you have good faith questions about non-MAGA people, go ahead and ask that question. You got a non-MAGA person right here. I'm happy to get into anything with you so long as you are asking in good faith. What's up, Italiana? Good to see you again. So yeah, just put your questions in the chat and we can get into it. I know that politics can be really difficult to parse out, because there's a big barrier to entry with all of the abbreviations and acronyms and last names and procedural rules that we just kind of like throw around. Like they just kind of talk about CRs. Are they going to pass the CR? Like, what the fuck is a CR? They talk about the filibuster. What the fuck is a filibuster? What's the difference between a filibuster-proof majority and a veto-proof majority? I'm here to answer all your questions, regardless of how simple or complicated they are. So you're not going to get roasted. You're not going to get debated or argued with. This is not the place for people to get into fights. Andrew Cabello says, what do you think about APAC, which is currently trending? So APAC is one of many lobbying organizations that tries to use money to influence political outcomes. APAC very specifically is lobbying on behalf of a good relationship between America and Israel. It's kind of like a loophole that they use to not have to register as foreign actors, foreign agents. So the short version is that they are bad, the same way that every lobbying organization is bad. The long version is that people tend to focus on APEC because it is associated with Israel, and it seems to me that it is kind of like a gateway drug to more hardcore anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Right. Mr. Hunter says, who is Bubba? So I've heard about this, Mr. Hunter. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but Bubba is Bill Clinton. And so what's the word I'm looking for? Allegedly, there is information in the fellow with the island files that Donald Trump performed mouth sex on Bill Clinton, but I have not been able to confirm or deny if that is what is in the files, or even if it is in the files, if that actually happened. All right, Teliana says, "LOL on a $2,000 check for tariff relief." Yeah, I mean it's bad both ways. Like if they don't do anything to alleviate the cost of living, people are going to suffer. Or if they send out the $2,000 checks, then inflation and the deficit are going to skyrocket. So it's like maybe you want to do a smart thing instead of that. But I think that Donald Trump thinks that he will be able to buy back some goodwill from the American public by sending everybody $2,000. Shawnee, good to see you again. Liz Cross says, how are the right handling these emails? Do we have a chance for impeachment? So normally, Liz, I would say no. I would say that a Republican Congress is never going to impeach Donald Trump. But there does seem to be something really weird about this fellow with the island scandal in that it seems to be breaking through. Like it seems to be cracking through to Donald Trump's base. It seems to be siphoning off support in Congress. So I am completely aghast, and I have no idea what's going to come down the pike. I think we have to not think about impeachment right now. I think we have to first think about getting this information out to the public. I think we have to think about passing the House, passing the Senate, and forcing Donald Trump to sign it into law. He has the option of either vetoing it, signing it, vetoing it, or pocket vetoing it. And smart money is on the pocket veto because then you can hopefully delay it to the point where it's out of the public's consciousness. But I don't think that people are going to let that happen. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. All right, YouTube and Twitch, what's going on? John Abbott says it's a really terrible time to know how to read. Yeah, for real. Ecuadorian baseball pitcher, good to see you again. It's the Rocketeer. Let's go indeed. Ecuadorian says it's interesting how the right won't fully release the files, but they will redact as much as possible to cover shit up. It's crazy. Normally I'd agree with you, Ecuadorian, but weirdly we're seeing a lot of elected Republicans buck Trump on this, and I don't understand why it's happening over this and not starving children or letting children get shot in schools or letting them die of cancer or letting them freeze to death by cutting off all sorts of assistance and research grants. But I'm happy that it's happening. I don't think that anybody can argue that the crimes that we're talking about are like the worst of the worst, like the most egregious. I'm just surprised that that people are bothered by that who weren't bothered by everything else. Ooh, right, see here. Susie says the Democrats redacted the name. No, that is inaccurate. There's no evidence to suggest that Democrats did any redacting of that information. J.S. Smith says he's happy because the Democrats stopped starving children and signed the clean CR that they should. I mean, I'm not happy that the Democrats ended the shutdown, but I am happy that starving children are going to get SNAP benefits and government heating assistance in the middle of winter time. RD2 King says pro-choice or pro-life. I am pro-choice, but even if you're pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Republican policies don't actually decrease or stop abortions. All they do is make pregnancy more dangerous for women. And if you want more information on that, RD2, let me know. MAGA Man says, chew on your pronouns if you're hungry. I mean, your mom chewed on my dick last night in a good way. Brian says, not defending Trump, but why would he run on releasing the files if he had involvement? So it's actually really interesting. More people in sort of like Trump's orbit were the ones calling for the files release, like Kash Patel, like Dan Bongino, like, what do you call it? Joe Rogan, all of those ilk. And when you talk to Donald Trump, when Donald Trump was asked about this on the campaign trail specifically, he said, I will release the JFK files. I will release the UFO files. The fellow at the island, well, we'll look into that and we'll see. Like, we don't want to throw anybody under the bus, that's shitty, shit like that. So he did equivocate on it on the campaign trail without question. Alrighty. John Abbott says, since the pocket veto takes between 11 and 12 days, I don't know if that's going to be long enough to make people forget. I agree. But I mean, it's better than, than signing it and hoping for the best. Let's see here. 69 so much 420 says, never mind, I'm out. DOJ on hot mic saying they plan to redact all Republican names, leave only Democrat names. No, that's accurate. 69. Why did you leave? Because what you said was accurate. We don't disagree, my guy. Are you still here? 69 so much 420? I never thought that I'd be begging somebody named 69 so much 420 to stay on my live chat. 40 Grips says extend healthcare for a year, then fix it. I mean, I think that we should be, I think we should fully fund the Affordable Care Act subsidies and then move towards universal healthcare from there. Dan Blackboard says, Joe Rogan said something really insightful about it. He said, it really makes you think. Dan Blackburn, you've got my fucking number, man. It's like you fed my brain into AI and you worked on all these jokes beforehand because you fucking nail me time and time again. I love my wife. He says, are you a Republican or a Democrat? I am a Democrat. Let's see here. Rowan13 says, if I have religious views that lean conservatives but don't want to support Republicans, what do I do? I think you should vote for Democrats, Rowan. The Democratic Party is a big tent, and we have everybody in there from people that have your religious views to other religious views to no religious views. Do you think that that is an inaccurate thing? Do you not feel as though the Democratic Party is welcoming of people that have religious views? Brian Barbita says Republicans would have had more pressure to reopen the government if Dems waited just a couple more weeks. Brian, I tend to agree with that, but there are other things about the shutdown fight that made it more complicated. For example, like we don't know what happens in Senate debates. Like that stuff is all behind closed doors. It's real the room where it happens shit if you get that reference. So yeah. Yeah, I would 100% believe if every Democratic senator, including the progressive ones like Bernie Sanders, said that the Republican Party told them that they will happily let everybody, die of starvation who's on SNAP benefits or die from freezing to death in the cold and shit like that. But yeah, I tend to agree. I tend to agree that the Democrats handled that very poorly, and it could have been done better. Even though people were struggling, it really seemed like people were on the Democrats' side on that. Pedro de los Reyes says, "Are you Jay?" I mean, my name is Jarrett. That begins with a J. I don't know what you are referring to. Chris says, if universal health care is so good, why does Congress refuse to be on it? Why does Congress? No, Congress is on it, Chris. Like they have basically universal health care. Their health care is paid for by the American taxpayers. I don't believe that they have any, deductibles or shit like that. I don't think that they get denied care for their medical treatment the way that Americans do who are on private health care. Chris Jersey Rican says, do you think Wighead will resign and pass the baton to JD so that he can get a pardon? That's one possible solution. I don't think that Donald Trump does that, though. That is real, what do you call it? Shit has really got to hit the fan for Donald Trump before he starts looking for an exit. I think he probably absconds to Russia before he does that. I could be wrong about that. Let's see here. Brian says, not many care until it affects you. Flight cancellations during holiday season would have put immense pressure on all of Congress to get a bill passed. So yes, Brian, again, I tend to agree with you on that, but let me put this in your noodle. Tell me what you think about this. I think Republicans in the Trump administration want there to be more struggle and chaos so that people would potentially take to the streets. And if people take to the streets, if there's property destruction, if there's violence, if there's looting, then Donald Trump can use that as justification to enact martial law, invoke the Insurrection Act, send the military into American cities even more than he already has. What do you think about that? Ryan Coolbean says, would you rather that the government was shut down 20 or 30 days? No, it really seemed like progress was happening, past the 40-day mark. CS says, do you think Argentina is Trump's exit plan and not Russia? I think he has made a lot of despot friends. So, yeah, potentially it will be Argentina instead. Let's see here. Ecuadorian says, my biggest problem is the fact that MAGA is trying to take away SNAP and they are trying to start a war with Venezuela. Yeah, those are all terrible also. He says, my nation of Ecuador is voting on whether or not to allow American military bases in our country. We are hoping the no wins so that Kristi Noem can take the L and so I can laugh at her publicly. Yeah, I mean, I think that every nation that is being shat on by the Trump administration has absolute, absolute justification for inflicting, strategic or logistical pain or pressure on the Trump administration. Brian says, good hypothetical, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not claiming that's 100% true, but that lines up with a lot of the Republican Party's actions as of late, and it matches Trump's rhetoric. But, trying to discern what's going on in Trump's brain is like trying to, catch a bunch of loose chickens, Bearded Grandma says, I think it's crazy how Trump is bombing boats without giving proof that they are from cartels. I also think that's crazy, Bearded Grandma. Some might say it is illegal, and some might say that everybody who is involved with that could potentially face legal consequences should the government turn over to more responsible people like the Democratic Party, for example. Brian Tedrow says, rooting against your own country. Who's rooting against their own country, Brian? Brian Barbita says, do you think Republicans love or fear Trump? I think it's a combination. I think that some Republicans love him. I think that some of them fear him. Some of them have made the devil's bargain of the political expediency of supporting him. Some of them are worried from threats of violence from his followers, like the way that Mike Pence almost got hung on January 6th, and Mitt Romney had to hire a bunch of private security guards. It's a mixed bag. Big Bruh says, how do you feel about the fact that Hillary had Libya destabilized over gold? I don't believe that is accurate, Big Bruh. Kelly McJelly, good to see you again. Rich was here, says everything he does now is for deflection purposes. The EP file info is so damaging. That's probably accurate. Brian Barbita says, during Trump's first term, I was a kid. Was his aggressive behavior evident then? So it was, but it was hindered by a couple of things. Number one, he did not have as sympathetic of a Supreme Court. He sat 3 of the current Supreme Court justices, and at that point, he had only sat 1 or 2. And so, yeah, he's worse now because of that. The Republican Party had a lot more regular ass people in it, like Mitt Romney and Adam Kinzinger and Jeff Flake, who were not willing to toe the MAGA line, and so they were sort of like a stopgap on some of his worst impulses. Additionally, they didn't have Project 2025 back then, so they didn't really have a game plan for how to navigate all of the checks and balances and completely turn America into a fascist dictatorship. And when Trump staffed his government, he was just taking whatever Republicans, like he didn't really examine them for loyalty to him specifically. So you got people like former Attorney General, the guy who was really short, kind of looked like Keebler Elf, was not able to be nominated to the Supreme Court because he was too racist. Can't remember his name right now. He recused himself from the Russia investigation, where other attorney generals like Pam Bondi would have been, not Bill Barr, the one before him. Like Pam Bondi would have not recused herself. She would just shut that whole investigation down. Not Matt Gaetz. No, we're talking about first term. God damn, I can't believe I forgot what this fucking dude's name. So yeah, he was restrained by a bunch of things. Jeff Sessions, thank you, user, a whole bunch of numbers. Really appreciate that. The Keebler Elf from Alabama, accurate. Yes. So yeah, does that make sense, Brian? Let me know. Uperlar says the bombing orders must be going through the generals or some high command. Why are they obeying? So some of them aren't. Some of them are resigning. I think that the guy who used to be in charge of overseeing military operations in South America has resigned over this. Brian says, what policies did you disagree with that he ran his campaign on in 2015? Ooh, that's a tough one, Brian, because it was just so long ago that a lot of that stuff has flitted out of my brain. Like, I'm confusing what he ran on versus what he said versus what he did. So yeah, just off the top of my head, he said that he was going to ban Muslims from coming into the country, which is blatantly unconstitutional and Islamophobic. He called immigrants coming from the South American countries rapists and criminals, and then he equivocated it by saying, I'm sure that some of them are fine, but I think you need to be more careful when you're the president of the United States or running to be president of the United States. He was extremely vague about things, which to me screamed con man. Like, he would never say specifically what he thought Hillary Clinton should be in jail for. He just said, we're looking into her whole situation and we can't believe what we're finding. And I'm like, that sounds like a kid doing a book report on a book he didn't read, So yeah, I'm trying to remember more specific policies that he was running on. I guess more than anything, I could just tell that he was full of shit. Like, he said that he was going to tax the rich, and I was like, no, you're not. You're rich. Like, you're a liar and a cheat. Like, he didn't pay his workers before he was president. Like, he was constantly being sued for not paying people for the jobs that they did for him. And I was like, well, if you do that to that person, then you'll probably carry that attitude over to other areas as well. I'm trying to remember other specific policies, but the thing that really stood out to me at the time was this guy is 100% full of shit, and he's not going to do the things that he said he was going to do. Elias says, what do you think about socialism? Socialism is fine. Communism is fine. Capitalism is fine. Like, they all work together in America right now. We currently have a little bit too much capitalism, in my opinion, because people are starving to death on the street while billionaires are buying their 5th golden yacht and taking their fucking private planes to their giant mega mansions. So maybe we need a little bit more communism and socialism, but, there's nothing inherently wrong with communism or socialism. Bruh says, not a question, but just want to say I think the Trump administration will haunt Republicans for years to come. From your lips to God's ears, bruh. I don't think, I am willing to give Republican voters a golden parachute to exit that whole fucking thing. But everybody who's like an elected leader or a paid talking head like Ben Shapiro, I think this should be a black mark on their records for the rest of their lives. Like, their name should be mud going forward. All right. Gordo's mom says, what do you expect from an orange felon, con, and a grifter? Yeah, exactly. Claudio Merrily says, do you think in order for the U.S. to maintain its military hegemony, interventionism is necessary? So I mean, there's a bunch of different things going on there. Like, is it good that America has like a monopoly on military supremacy around the globe? Should we be moving towards a more peace-driven society where we just sort of like start de-escalating all of our military buildups so that nobody has the power to do invasions on Venezuela or Afghanistan or anything like that? I do think that we should look at global policy, America's stance on global policy, or really just any strong nation's stance on global policy, not as an intervening regime or obviously not empire, but just soft power and diplomacy, so that we are allowing nations to, maintain their sovereignty, but we're trying to influence them in a way that is better for them, their citizens, and the global environment in general. I hope that answers your questions. Edu says you're taking guests. I've got some questions. So I am mercurial about when I take guests. You can leave your request up. I may or may not accept it. If you ask good faith questions in the chat, you are more likely to be brought up. Walter the Dog says party changes is just oscillates. It's not determined by policy. I don't know what that means. Brian says Trump was a Democrat at one point. Would you disagree with him if he ran a real campaign back then? Probably. I mean, we've known for a long time that Donald Trump was like completely full of shit, if you look at his behavior in the 80s, for example, like he spent a lot more time cultivating this image of being a successful businessman as opposed to actually being a successful businessman. He has famously said at certain points to his daughter Ivanka that he would point to like homeless people and say that person's richer than me because they're not $90 million in debt. So yeah, I don't really buy that he was ever a full-fledged Democrat. He was probably just a Democrat because he wanted to be able to force all of the women that he was cheating on his wife with to get abortions. But yeah, I still would not, it's not about, party loyalty. It's about who is a trustworthy person with good policies. I don't really trust a guy who shits in a golden toilet to take care of the working class. Does that make sense, Brian? Brian says, would Biden or Kamala have your vote in 2020? They did. Biden had my vote in 2020. Kamala had my vote in 24. Walter Lidar says, new party comes in and then does bad, which just pushes all votes to the opposite way, and it repeats. I completely disagree with that, Walter the Dog. It is true that for some reason we just kind of like flip-flop between the two parties, but I think that has a lot more to do with incumbency bias as opposed to the parties actually doing good or bad things. What do you call it? Good or bad things while they are in office. Daniel Tinkham says, you are deeply outnumbered. I have no idea what you're talking about, Daniel. Edu says, see, the right has been pretty stable over decades, but left keeps getting more left. Future of left, ? I 100% disagree, Edu, that the right has been pretty stable over decades. If you look at Nixon-era Republicans, they were less extreme than Reagan-era Republicans, which were less extreme than George W. Bush-era Republicans, which were way less extreme than Donald Trump Republicans. So, yeah, I reject the premise of your question entirely. Laser says, thoughts on the JQ? I don't know what that is. Maya says, what do you think is the best way to deal with late-stage capitalism? Regulation, taxing the rich, replacing every Republican in office with a Democrat. That's at least a good start, in my opinion. All right, I've been ignoring my my Twitch and YouTube comments for way too long. Let's see here. JP says, how do you feel about Lannisters racking up debt? Will they pay later? And that's that. So they say. Let's see here. JP says generals are a politician. General's not a promotion, but an act of Congress. Ooh, interesting. I don't know if that's accurate, JP, but I take your word for it. It's the Rocketeer says, man, remember Paul Ryan? Every time I think I miss how normal he was, I slap myself for forgetting he basically enabled everything we're in now. I mean, yeah, you can be a regular ass Republican. You're still advocating for trickle down economics, then you fucking suck. Yeah, Paul Ryan was a fucking tool. JP says, am I the only one who notices that Trump has only lived in hotels and is judging the White House as a hotel? I don't know if that's accurate. I mean, didn't he have a condo in one of his Trump towers? I don't think that counts as a hotel, right? Average Joe says, have you seen the Wall Street snobs freaking out about Lena Khan working with Mondani's transition team? Their fear is deeply gratifying. 100%. Lena Khan is a hero. And if you are saying that she is bad, then you are a villain. I think that's pretty accurate. H8 says, give us better weather tomorrow. All right, I guess I'll call my Jew friends and see if we can manage that. The Scorpionator says, opinion on Donica Lewinsky. I don't really have any. Oh, I see what you're saying there. I don't know if that's true. It seems possible to me, but even if it's in the Fellow with the Island Files, he's not a really reliable narrator, so I would not, I would take his word for it. I would love to see some evidence that that happened. That is fucking bananas. Abdul says, give me one good thing that the Republicans have done for America. So, Abdul, just about your question really quickly, what is it that makes that a thing that I have to do? Like, if somebody is really, really bad, do I have to then find the tiny little good things that they have done? It's kind of weird to demand if somebody stabs me in the chest, like you're saying that I can't be a reliable source if I don't say something nice about the dude that stabbed me in the chest. Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency. Reagan advocated for immigrants and against tariffs. George W. Bush was against demonizing Muslims after 9/11. Like, there's good things that you can find in these piles of shit, but they're still piles of shit. Sam says, is it possible for Zoran to do the stuff he wants to do? Like, will they run out of money? So there are a bunch of barriers to Mamdani accomplishing all the things that he wants to accomplish. It's hard to do things is probably the number one reason. But also there are potentially some centrists or Republicans in the New York City and New York State government that could potentially try to impede what he's doing. And the billionaire class is obviously going to try to impede him with all of the money and power that they have available to them, which is, virtually limitless. So he's definitely got an uphill climb. But, if the citizens of New York City stay with him and help him to achieve these goals, it's very possible that it can do things like free buses and city-run grocery stores and food deserts and stuff like that. He's trying to make New York City more affordable to live in and subsidizing all of these efforts by taxing the rich. And that is a recipe for success, in my opinion. The only thing that could go wrong is, like good faith human error by him or somebody on his team, or, malicious intervention by people who are more centrist or right-wing or the billionaire class, Gavinator says, where has that succeeded? I mean, everywhere that has social programs is a massive success. There's a reason why, countries in like Norway and Sweden area, the Netherlands, are consistently rate higher on the happiness index and have less income inequality than we do in America. All right, Norway and Sweden. There you go, Gavinator. Gary says, this guy spring lies. Ooh, wow, very poetic. It's like this guy's translating from a second language, maybe Russian. Daniel D says, why is Trump going crazy against Republicans for the Fellow with the Island Files? I think it's two things. I think number one, he knows that there is extremely damaging information about him in those documents because he's been told by the people who've looked at it, like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. But also, I think that he's just furious that people are breaking ranks. And he wants to have like totalitarian control over not just the Republican Party, but the American government in general. And anything that is less than he used to have of that totalitarian control is going to enrage him. And, on a side note, people sometimes worry about comeuppance for pieces of shit like Donald Trump. Like, what if he dies before he sees any legal accountability for the things that he's done? It's moments like this that give me hope. Not hope, but they're a salve to me. They're a balm. because I know that even if he never sees a minute of jail time, his life has been basically jail because he's been miserable for so much of it. Like, you don't do the things that he does unless you are a deeply miserable person. And so, him being upset about this thing happening right now, that is fucking chicken soup for my soul. Alrighty. John Abbott says one of the first emails I saw in this batch implied that Trump did mortgage fraud to the tune of 30 million with Mar-a-Lago. How amazing would it be if he lost his favorite hotel and golf course? I mean, like, is there a difference between that and the shit that he was found guilty of in New York? Like, the dude is just fraud on top of fraud on top of theft on top of corruptions. Like, it's fraud all the way down with that fucking dude, Blomstraw Wellness says, are you an expert? I think so. Beto says, do you think American politicians are crooked like other countries? Yes, but not every American politician is crooked. Shawnee says, all I can think about is that Putin may have photos involving Trump and Clinton. Potentially. It definitely sounds a lot more damaging than the supposed P tape. Andy says, Trump sues anyone does not like 10 people this week alone. Accurate. Daniel D says, if felons can become president, they should be able to rent apartments. Completely accurate. Sandra says, everybody vote in the primaries and midterms in 26. Do not get comfortable. Go vote. I am with Sandra. Chief says, is it true all buildings are defamed from Trump? I don't really know what that question means, Chief. H8 says states should control laws excluding civil rights and military decisions made. I don't know what that means, H8. Beto says, is politics just a way to keep funding the military? No, it is also a way of paving roads and educating children and putting out fires and protecting our borders. Joe Luncapeya says, I'd be like Wolverine laying in bed looking at the Trump photos. I love you forcing that meme into my brain. That really tickled me. Joe Luncapeya. Abdul says, which political party is fair to Americans? Definitely the Democratic Party is more fair to Americans. A whole bunch of icons says, what's your take on Zionism? Zionism, the definition of it depends on who you're talking to. I believe that Israel has been an extremely shitty neighbor to their neighboring countries, and they are guilty of war crimes and genocide against the people of Palestine. But I also believe that the citizens who are living in Israel, they deserve to have nice lives the same as everybody else. And so I don't think that we should uproot everybody that's living in Israel, but I also think that we should hold Israel accountable for the crimes that they have done against their neighboring countries, specifically and especially Palestine. Alrighty, CS is, how much would you cut the defense budget by? That is a really good question. I have no idea. I think first step would be just like forcing them to pass an audit. I don't think they've passed an audit in like 50 years or something. All right. Hoop Downfall says, did you see the Trump and Clinton email? I did. And I mean, it's fun to, think about how damaging that would be to both of those guys. But I don't know if any of that is accurate. It is hilarious to think of two shitty dudes, in that kind of compromising position together. Lauren, good to see you again. Gordo's mom says, International Crime Court, ICC, should investigate Trump and Bibi for crimes against humanity. I think the ICC has already done Bibi. I don't know what they're waiting for on Donald Trump. User a bunch of numbers. Kathy says, what do you think about Bondi saying they are going to take down artifacts? I don't know about that story, user. Do you know what artifacts they're talking about specifically? Shawnee Flytrap says it's a presidential bromance. I mean, Trump wasn't president at that time, so it was just, Bill Clinton being freaky as usual and being the top in that relationship. Alrighty. Scrolling up on the TikTok comments. Chief says taking his name off of buildings. Yeah, I think that some of the Trump properties have removed his name from them because they are devaluing the properties and are, people don't like being associated with him. But yeah, I don't know if it's like universal or anything like that. Alrighty, scrolling up on the TikTok comments. Is there anything that I missed here? Sam says, will anti-Semitism continue to get more mainstream? I don't know about that, Sam. I know that anti-Semitism is very valuable for people on the right. It is a very valuable tool. It's a cudgel for like the far right-wing government of Israel to use against all of their critics. But I do think we are potentially seeing a crest where people are recognizing that things like racism, misogyny, and anti-Semitism are tools that the rich use to divide us and make sure that we do not focus all of our rage and attention on them, the rich assholes who are actually ruining our lives. There's something really sneaky about the way that Trump kind of exploded onto the scene and kind of gave cover for a bunch of people to be racist and misogynistic and anti-Semitic. But I think that we are we're kind of seeing this moving target of racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic Groundhog Day whack-a-mole, where they pop their head up and say, "Oh, is it cool for me to come out? Is it cool to be a racist or a misogynist or an anti-Semite or whatever?" Now that Trump is president, and many of these people lose their jobs, many of these people lose friends, and so we are seeing negative consequences for those people. It's just not as universal and top down the way that it used to be when, the government was willing to say that those things were bad. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we've reached a crest, if we're gonna start, declining anytime soon. The people that have a lot of money and power want to continue those ideologies so that we don't focus on them. So hopefully we can all be part of that project of eliminating those hateful ideologies. Right, Frankie, the derogatory term for an Italian person that I'm allowed to say technically, but I won't. Ask your view on border policy. There's a lot of specifics involved in border policy, like hiring more asylum judges and immigration judges, cleaning up pathway to citizenship, strengthening border security, dealing with South American countries to try to eliminate the causes of mass immigration, making sure that there's not civil wars or cartel control and shit like that. But I think the more important thing is which party is actually serious about solving this problem and which party wants it to stay a problem so that they can run on it going forward. And I think that the answer to that is obvious. Like the Democratic Party has tried to solve that problem, except for Republican filibustering. They might have actually made some progress on it. And the Republican Party is on record saying that they want this to be a problem still so that they can get electoral wins off of it. Otherwise, the Democrats and Republicans would have passed their immigration bill during the Biden administration. But Donald Trump literally told those Republican senators, kill that bill. I don't want this problem to get any better. I want to be able to run on this going forward. And that to me says you have no credibility on this issue whatsoever. Gordo's mom says what Biden wanted to do that. Joe Biden, who was president between 2020 and 2024. Brian Barbitta says, does your religious beliefs affect your political beliefs? So I don't consider myself, I am an agnostic person. I was raised Catholic, and those teachings 100% affect my political beliefs. I believe in, healing the sick and clothing the unclothed and housing the unhoused and feeding the hungry. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Turn the other cheek, the good Samaritan, like generally being chill with everybody and helping each other out, welcoming the stranger from the strange land, all that good Jesus shit that some people in the religious right tend to completely disagree with. Okay, social justice says, is there anything else that can be done when it seems like your senator is deliberately ignoring you? 100%. Like, there's no rule that says you're not allowed to go to where they're having dinner and, annoy them. You're allowed to go to their offices and annoy their staff. And, the best thing that you can do is start a political action group, which you only need like 2 or 3 friends to form a political action group. And just, let your senator know that unless they engage with you or, change what they're doing, then your political action group, which will be Americans for Replacing Your Shitty Senator, will devote all of the time and energy that they have to either losing them their primary or losing them their election. Bruh says, how to resolve the housing crisis, build more houses. Louis says, 4th time, Germany did bring conscription back. Any thoughts? I mean, I am extremely concerned, Louis, about the strength of the neo-Schnazi party, the AfD party in Germany. You really don't want right-wing ideologies popping up in Germany and Japan for obvious reasons, and it's popping up everywhere. There is a concerted effort by malicious billionaires to advance right-wing ideologies across the globe. Like if you read Ben Rhodes's book After the Fall, he talks about this uncanny rise in authoritarian ideologies. Going back to like 2014 or 2012 or something like that. So yeah, I'm worried about it. I'm extremely worried about it, Louis. I think that the solution to that is the same as the solution for authoritarian everywhere in the world, which is that people need to talk to each other. They got to do the activism of reining in all of that shit. They have to solve the problems that are pushing people towards that extremism. All of that shit. Alrighty, Phil Ring says, how do we address the rising popularity of socialism in America? What is the problem with the rising popularity of socialism in America, Phil Ring? Because everything that we pay for with tax dollars is technically socialism. The post office, public education, fire departments, military, paved roads, like that's all socialism. Why is that a problem, Phil? Alrighty, Brian Barbitus says, what are your top 3 current issues you want legislation for? That's a really difficult one, Brian, because it's like, what's the most urgent thing that we have? It's probably cost of living, but after that, we have to do something about the electoral injustice in this country, where, the Republican Party is able to coast to massive political power with only 35% of public support and only 22% of the public voting for them. So yeah, I think getting rid of the Electoral College, rebalancing or eliminating the Senate, making partisan and racial gerrymandering illegal, expanding the Supreme Court. Like, there's just so many things that need to be done to make it a more even playing field, to make it so that the will of the majority is actually heard by this government. Getting money out of politics, undoing Citizens United. Like, there's a massive laundry list of to-dos. Statehood for DC and Puerto Rico. Like, nothing's been done about gun violence for a long time since the Biden administration passed that bipartisan gun control legislation. So yeah, there's just so much work that needs to be done. Alrighty, Louis says, are you in a political party? Yes, I am a Democrat. Phil Ring says, because it's predicated on theft and authoritarianism. That is not accurate, Phil Ring. Is there a reason why you think that? Because, as I mentioned, the post office and public schools and paved roads are socialism, but that's not theft and authoritarianism, right? That is just people all kicking in money to buy something that benefits all of us, the same way that if you have roommates and you all chip in for cable. Phil Ring, what do you think about that? All right, I've been ignoring Twitch and Twitch and YouTube for too long. Let's see here. It's the Rocketeer says they're taking down his name and putting "We Rented" in this building before he was crazy stickers. That's very funny. Look at Tesla bits. JP says Brainwave. Joe Biden was the filling in a Biden-Trump press sandwich. What a weird thing to say. Average Joe says, can we acknowledge that groups like the Anti-Defamation League and AIPAC cause increased anti-Semitism, and increased anti-Semitism benefits Israel's political strategy? That's why they go after Mamdani while largely ignoring Nick Fuentes and Elon Musk. I believe that I've heard negative things about the ADL and that maybe they don't really have their priorities in the right place, but I definitely agree with that on AIPAC. Like, the same reason why anti-Semitism aids the billionaire class, anti-Semitism aids shitty right-wing actors in Israel and Israel lobbying arms. So 100%. Alrighty, let's see here. Phil, looking for your response. Phil says it is theft. It's taking money from people by force. It seems like you're arguing that taxation in general is theft, Phil Ring. And, obviously we have ideological differences concerning that. But I guess my question to you is, do you think there should be no taxes? Do you think there should be no government? Like, are you just a full-on libertarian? All right, scrolling down the bottom. John says, love your comedy. Thank you, John. Luis says, where would you see yourself in the Democratic Party? I'm a progressive, so I'm much more of a AOC Bernie Sanders than I am a, than I am a Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi. Phil Ring says, yes, I am an anarcho-capitalist. Okay. Do you know about things like the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, Phil Ring? Have you heard about that? Cracker prices. We should do what the Dolph did that fixed Germany's economy before the war. I don't think that that is a great idea, Cracker Pride. And just based on your screen name, I'm pretty sure you are not here in good faith. All right, Phil Ring, still waiting on your response. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Do you know about that? Let me know where you think about that. Brian Barbados says, how do you feel about Gavin Newsom gerrymandering? The Democratic Party has been clear about gerrymandering for a really long time, Brian. They are against it. And that is why during the Biden administration, they tried to pass legislation to make both partisan and racial gerrymandering illegal. The Republican Party filibustered it. So, should the Democratic Party allow the Republican Party to do partisan gerrymandering to get unfair advantages in national elections, or should Democrats do their own partisan gerrymandering with the express intention of undoing that partisan gerrymandering as soon as the Republican Party does the same? I think that that is the responsible thing to do. The Democratic Party for a long time had this philosophy of we will govern as responsible adults, and we will not do the same kind of lying and cheating that the Republican Party does to win elections, and hope that people would recognize the value of having people govern them that have that philosophy. But the Democratic Party has been proven wrong in that regard. And while I think it is important to maintain a level of honesty with the American public, I think that where the gamesmanship of the Republican Party is concerned, the Democrats need to fight fire with fire. Until they can make partisan gerrymandering illegal, they need to fight fire with fire, in my opinion. All right, Phil, still waiting on your response. Says, just looked it up. Thank you for sharing. So the Triangle Factory fire is basically like there was this massive, what do you call it? Everybody who worked in that factory died because there were not emergency exits. And so the government mandated that every company has to have emergency exits going forward so that people don't die in factory fires. Do you think that that is good legislation, or do you think that the free market should have solved that problem, Phil? Let me know what you think about that. Brian says, are there any Democrats that stick out to you that you strongly dislike? Oh, definitely. Like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, I think have positive qualities, and they're definitely better than every elected Republican because, at the very least, they are not advocating for trickle-down economics. But the fact of the matter is that they are way too old. They are clinging to power desperately. They are stomping on the necks of the younger, more progressive Democrats that are trying to, be a part of the Democratic coalition. Nancy Pelosi stupidly went out there and said that people that work in government should be able to do insider trading, which now she's the face of insider trading in Congress when literally every Republican does it as well. Chuck Schumer, doesn't have his fastball anymore. Not really sure how great of a negotiator he ever was. Not a great communicator in this moment. Stupidly did not endorse Mamdani. There's a bunch of people. Obviously Senator Menendez got caught with fucking gold bars in his pocket from the government of Egypt. So yeah, there's another guy for you right there. Alrighty. All right, Phil, have you responded to my Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire comments? Okay. John Abbott says the ADL did apoplectics for Musk's throw his heart out. Was kind of hard to take them seriously after that. Yeah, no. Like Elon Musk did a fucking Zig Heil on Inauguration Day twice. Like there's no fucking two bones about it. And the fact that there was anybody arguing the opposite is just evidence of how easily we accept rationalization from bad actions on the right. All right, JP says Trump served on each side of Biden, right? A sandwich now. All right, I'm not reading that comment, JP. JP says 21 people died in Boston in 1919 from a molasses flood. Regulation is necessary. Completely agree with that. All right, back into the TikTok comments. The Virginia Steptis, great to see you again, says, what do you think of Bank of America reporting ammo purchases? I think it's interesting. I don't really see how reporting ammo purchases can be a deleterious invasion of Americans' privacy. Report it to the government, report it to the FBI in case, a militia is forming that is planning on doing, terrorism, domestic, stochastic, whatever kind of terrorism. If you disagree with that, I'm open to hearing an argument about it. But, my personal belief is that we should be going much harder on gun control regulation. And I'm willing to equivocate that position to find common ground with other people in America. But, if I had my druthers, I would just fucking get rid of all of them. Jack Rogers says, are you a liberal? I don't know if people would define me as a liberal or a leftist or whatever. I call myself a progressive Democrat. Brian Barbita says, thoughts on Kathy Hochul not passing the free bus legislation as of now? I don't know what the parameters are of state government versus city government in regards to that. I think Kathy Hochul should get on board with the Mamdani agenda. Because I believe in it. I think it'd be better for everybody living in New York State in general. But yeah, if that's what she believes, if she has some issue with it, then I guess she's able to use her power to do that, and hopefully Mamdani has planned for that contingencies. Alrighty, let's see here. Chucky Arla says thoughts on the Donica Lewinsky situation. Funny to think about. I would love to see some actual evidence that it happened, as opposed to notorious liar and piece of shit Jeffrey Epstein saying that it happened. Yeah, it's a funny thing to imagine, especially because obviously Clinton is the top in that relationship. Jack Rogers says, do you believe Zoran is a communist? No, I do not. Artem says, Berenstein, are you a Jew? I'm going to answer that, Artem, but I'm going to encourage you to try not to do dog whistle anti-Semitism in the future. My dad is Jewish. I was not raised Jewish. Technically, I am not Jewish because your mom has to be Jewish if you're going to be Jewish, and I'm not practicing Judaism. But some people who decided that if you have one drop of Jewish blood in you means that you are a dirty, dirty Jewish person, then the answer is yes. Artem says, just say yes or no. No need to play the victim. All right, that's strike two, Artem, and you are really close to getting blocked. So either ask a question in good faith or you'll be out of here. Virginia Stepta says, I disagree with the caveat that with proficient training of a firearm, there should be zero control. Arden says, back to Europe, and you are out of here. Guys, I am like fucking 10 for 10 at calling out all of these anti-Semites, guys. Tyler Engel says, is that Tim Robinson? That is not a compliment. If we're talking about comedic bona fides, then that is 100% a compliment. But I don't know if we have any sort of physical similarities. Chucky Arla says, wait, was it Berenstein or Berenstain Bears? I have no idea. Triska says, wow, that was blatant racism. Yeah, 100%. Okay. The Virginia, I'm not really sure what you mean by that comment. You disagree with the caveat that with proficient training of a firearm, there should be zero control. Oh, yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, let's have insurance. Let's have mandatory licensing like we do with car purchases. Right, Jack Rogers says, what's your opinion on SNAP programs and the Democrats shutting down the government? So Jack Rogers, the Democrats didn't shut down the government. The Democrats just refused to fund the government because the Republican Party was poised to make everybody's healthcare coverage skyrocket. I believe in social safety net programs. They are better for everybody, regardless of if you're using them or not. And so I believe that it was wrong of the Republican Party to use SNAP benefits as leverage for reopening the government. I think the Democratic Party was right to call attention to the damage that the Republican Party is doing to their own constituents. I think they probably handled ending the shutdown poorly, but in general, it's a very difficult issue because you are balancing a messaging strategy, a refusal to comply with the fascist agenda, and people sincerely struggling from a government shutdown. Kimberlina says, this is about politics, not religion. That is accurate. Barbita says, Zoran's agenda will be hard to pursue without state help. I'm sure that's accurate, Brian, but maybe the citizens of New York State will, primary Kathy Hochul and teach her a lesson about not advancing that agenda. Maybe there are other ways that Zoran can use the power of the city to achieve that goal as well. Harder does not necessarily mean impossible. Shader to the Raiders says it wasn't a shutdown, it was a refusal to fund. Shouter the Raider, it takes two to tango, as the expression goes. And the Republican Party could have not shut down the government by agreeing to fund Affordable Care Act subsidies. So, it's fucking six of one, half dozen of the other. You say potato, I say potato. The fact of the matter is that the Republicans and Democrats decided to shut down the government together because the Republican Party wanted to increase everybody's health insurance costs, and the Democratic Party wanted that not to happen. So, argue with me on that. Jack Rogers says no, because the Republicans were cutting funding for pointless programs. Do you really think that, Jack Rogers? Do you really think that programs that feed hungry children and keep children from freezing to death during the winter time are useless, pointless programs? Do you really think that programs that keep everybody's rapidly accelerating healthcare costs from rapidly accelerating are pointless programs, Jack? Let me know what you think about that. Gordo's mom says, I'm upset that the Democrats caving, Republicans won't keep their word on revisiting the Affordable Care Act. I'm upset too, Gordo, but I think that people are being a little hyperbolic about it. Like, Democrats did not have a 20-point lead that they blew. They did not fold with a full house. They had a fucking pair of twos, and they were doing it the best they could. And yeah, I think there was a way better way they could have handled that, but it is a complicated situation. They didn't fuck it up, and they're not doing three-dimensional chess. It's somewhere in the middle. Politics is complicated. User a bunch of numbers says, are you conservative? No, I'm not. I'm a progressive Democrat. Muzz King says, are Republicans ready to care for their elderly? Jack Rogers says they were using it as leverage to push their liberal, socialist, LGBTQ agenda. That really didn't answer my question there, Jack Rogers. I mean, it kind of shows your bias against people who are potentially different than you or have different political beliefs than you. But I ask again, like, do you think that it is a useless program to feed people who are hungry, especially children? Do you think it's a useless useless program to make sure that children don't freeze to death in the middle of wintertime, Jack Rogers? If you don't answer that question or ask me another question, then I'm gonna have to boot you, Jack, because just based on your comments, it doesn't really seem like you're here in good faith. Brian Barbita says Indiana won't push forward with redistricting. Well, that's good news. User a bunch of numbers says, do you support LGBTQ rights? Yes, I do. Gordo's mom says MAGA's obsession with what's in other people's pants is just weird and creepy. Completely agree with that. User a bunch of numbers says opinion on Trump. He's a massive piece of shit, terrible president, incompetent, corrupt liar. Jackie Arlaw says any chance they pivoted away from their shutdown leverage to further pursue the fellow with the island angle. So that is one potential like three-dimensional chess justification for the way that the Democrats ended the shutdown. Another one is that they included in the funding bill keeping programs alive that people need, like SNAP benefits. And so they basically just took that leverage away from the Republican Party should they decide to shut the government down again in January. So potentially we are looking at another shutdown in the government in January. And now we have all of our reps seated. We have the discharge petition signed. We have SNAP benefits and heating assistant programs off the table for the Republican Party to use as leverage to end that shutdown. So an argument could be made that this was very smart for Democrats to do. I don't really buy that argument. It's possible that all of that was done intentionally, but even if it was, the messaging behind ending the shutdown right now, the way that they did, was a fucking disaster. And it played into everybody's negative preconceived ideas of the Democratic Party. When everybody views you as weak and unwilling to fight, you can't do things that make you look weak and unwilling to fight. Okay. User a bunch of numbers says, are you Christian? I was raised Catholic, but I'm currently agnostic. User a bunch of numbers says, Israel or Palestine? Both, for the populations of the citizenry, and against both governments. So I'm against Hamas and the Netanyahu government. Liz says, do you think they're going to do a pocket veto to get out of releasing the e-files? That's my guess. That's like the best way for Trump to handle this. I don't know if it's going to work, though. Like, I don't know if people are going to fucking forget about the fellow with the island files. The anti-gooner says, views on abortion. I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Republican policies don't actually decrease or stop abortions. They only make pregnancy worse for women, and Democratic policies actually do decrease the number of abortions. All right, getting back over to Twitch and YouTube. Right, there are two types of regulations in the U.S., says John Abbott. Those written in citizens' blood and those bought by the rich. Wow, that's very accurate and poetic, John Abbott. Ecuadorian says, I want common ground with the other side, Jared. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate the right. However, I don't appreciate them cheering on Trump invading my Latin American neighbors and trying to force us to have a government like Trump's. I completely understand that, Ecuadorian. And, I feel the same way about, like, somebody who's in an ICE concentration camp right now. I'm not going to say you have to find common ground with a Republican voter. I'm not going to say that you need to forgive them for their vote that caused you this specific turmoil. I believe that it is more productive, just for politics in general, to have that attitude, that empathy for the voters and accountability for the people in power. But everybody has a right to their own emotions, and it is completely fine to be mad about that stuff. I used to be mad about that stuff also, and I cut people out of my life because of it. But that's just not my philosophy right now. Alrighty, let's see here. Back into the TikTok comments. Jack Rogers, Thinker, says, "What's your opinion on?" I don't know who that person is. Jack Rogers says, "I never said that." So you support murder. Abortion is murder. Congratulations, Jack Rogers. I warned you. Now you're out of here. Eric says, I disagree with you at times, but I thoroughly enjoy your lives. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric. I thoroughly enjoy you all the time. Biggie says, how do you think these files will play out in the midterms? That is I don't know how that is going to play out, Biggie. Like, I am shocked that both the MAGA base and elected Republicans are breaking with Trump on this, because they've been with him through everything, like starving children, freezing children to death, holding children in concentration camps, allowing them to be shot at their schools. And obviously, SAing children is arguably worse than all of those things combined. But still, I'm like, you're letting him get away with all of that. Like, why aren't you letting him get away with this, And notably, there are still some elected Republicans and people in the MAGA base and people in the MAGA talking head sphere, like Tim Pool, who I'm sure are going to continue, beating the Trump drum through all of this, regardless of what comes out. But the fact that there's any, fracturing of that base is just like mind blowing to me. So yeah, I'm hoping that continues. I hope that this will be decisive in the midterms. But yeah, I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows, All right, Lawrence, is there a legal way to fight MAGA Dominion having control over our voting? 100%, Lawrence. So if you live in a state or district that uses those voting machines, then you need to be putting political pressure on your secretaries of state, your mayor, and your governor to remove those machines or have some level of oversight to make sure that they are not, monkeying with vote totals in order to help Trump and the Republican Party. This is where the power of the people, the rubber really hits the road with the power of the people. Like, form a political action group, hound your representatives until you have the kind of oversight that you feel confident in, that you feel your vote is going to be counted accurately. Alrighty, let's see here. Disciple of X says, I think a lot of people here in Texas are starting to turn blue. From your lips to God's ears, where Texas and the Democratic Party is concerned, it's a little bit like, Charlie Brown in the football, but people seem to be really loving James Tallarico, and every election we get closer and closer to that massive electoral victory. So yeah, I never will write off a state entirely. But Texas is massive. It is expensive to run elections there. I am hoping that the groundwork of political campaigns in Texas will help move the needle there in ways that the national elections have not in the past. User Kathy says, "Sorry, Goy." Kathy, did you really mean to write "Sorry, Goy" to somebody? Me, maybe? Like, I'm gonna give you a chance to take that back, Kathy, because I remember your question from earlier, and it did not wrinkle me in the same way. And thank you to Megan and Gloria for helping me reach my gift goal. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the support, and especially as reaching gift goals helps boost me in the algorithm, We are at an hour and 5 minutes, so we're going to start wrapping up soon. Get your final questions in. User a bunch of numbers says opinion on Islam. My opinion on Islam is the same as my opinion on Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and Taoism and Shintoism. Like, every religion is fine. People can celebrate them if they like. Eric says, used to be conservative, but now I'm breaking away. Trump is the main reason. I'm really happy to hear that. Eric, are there things that you still don't like about the Democratic Party? Let's get into it. Gordo's Bomb says, we need younger progressive Democrats in office. We do, Gordo, and the change is happening. It's happening as we speak. It's not happening fast enough for my liking, and I'm sure too fast for other people's liking, but it is happening, and we can all celebrate that. Oh, you guys are way too sweet, helping me reach my gift goal again. Thank you, Muzz King and Triska. Y'all are the real heroes. Alrighty, let's see here. Let's get another question here. CS says, who did it better, Lewinsky or Trump? That's very funny. All right. Okay. Jude says, do you think there's an alternative to capitalism? 100% there's an alternative to capitalism, Jude. So there is no 100% capitalist country. There is no 100% communist country. There is no 100% socialist country. But what we do see are countries that have varying degrees of mixed models. So we do have socialism and communism already here in America, in addition to a lot of late-stage capitalism, which, I have many issues with. But, they have capitalism in Norway and Sweden and Canada and Germany and France. They just also have a little bit more communism and socialism than we do. And I think we need to model that, that system a little bit more. Disciple of X says, what are your thoughts on Bernie Sanders? I like him. Brian Barbetta says, do you think majority of Americans are dumb since majority voted for Trump? So a couple of things about that, Brian Barbetta. I don't think that the majority of Americans are dumb. And it is not accurate to say that a majority of Americans voted for Donald Trump. The majority of Americans did not vote. Since 1975, every single presidential election, the technical winner of that election did not vote. More people did not vote in every election since 1975 than did vote for one specific candidate. The only exception to that is 2020. Joe Biden got the most votes, did not vote, got the second most votes, and Donald Trump got the third most votes. So this election in 2024 for Donald Trump was decided by 22% of Americans' potential voting base. Now this is where things get interesting, I think, Brian. There is a statistical correlation between education level and people voting for Republicans. So the less education you receive, the more likely you are to vote for Republicans. Now, I don't think that means that those people are dumb or uninformed, but I do think that it's interesting and important to dig into that. Number one, is that secretly why the Republican Party has been championing cutting funding for public schools, because they're basically creating a larger pool of their own voters. And similarly, what is it about getting an education that means that you don't fall for bullshit, that if you don't get an education, you are more susceptible to Republican bullshit, Some people will argue that, education indoctrinates people into being liberal. That is complete utter nonsense, Like, I don't have any evidence to show people that it's nonsense, but there's just no evidence that it exists, So yeah, I think that probably when you have an education, you gain critical thinking skills that allow you to spot con men or rhetorical tricks to con people. But I don't think it has anything to do with how smart or dumb people are. There are plenty of people with PhDs who are fucking idiots, and there are plenty of people who didn't graduate high school who are geniuses. Alrighty, sorry for ignoring you over here on Twitch and YouTube, everybody. Jack2285 says, hi, are we Democratic here or Republican here? Just asking. We're a Democrat, but everybody is welcome, Democrat, Republican, things in the middle and things on the outskirts. John Abbott says, the reality is Texas has been heavily purple for close to 2 decades. It just looks red because of massive amounts of voter suppression and gerrymandering. John Abbott, you are correct. Average Joe says, do you agree or disagree that electing a corporate Democrat, while better than MAGA, is not very beneficial in making positive changes in our political system? No, I don't agree with that, Average Joe. I think the positive change happens, but it just happens a lot slower and clunkier. Because while the kind of like operating ethos of the neoliberal movement is that you can do both. You can have a business friendly, rich person friendly Democratic Party that also takes care of marginalized communities, working class Americans, unions, poor people, SNAP benefits, etc. I think that that has proven to be a flawed political philosophy, but I don't think that it is more damaging to the cause than just electing Republican politicians, for example. Ready. Jersey Rican says, "Are you running for office, Jared?" That is most likely not in my future. CS says, "People that are more educated are more likely to understand acceptable citations is probably part of it." Yeah, maybe. Gray says, "Dems are upper class elitist leftists." That is not accurate. Working class people are also Democrats as well. And if you're talking about elitists, like when you talk about the fucking president who's taking shits in golden toilets and flying around on private jets his entire fucking life. Uperlar says, "There are major distraction coming from this administration. If so, what and when?" Yeah, the Trump administration is all terrible things that are simultaneously terrible for their own sake and also distractions from the other terrible things that they are doing. So are the concentration camps distractions from the fellow with the island files, or the fellow with the island files the distraction from the concentration camps? It's like six of one, half dozen of the other. Let's see here. All right, guys, I'm gonna do my outro, but I'm definitely gonna get to some of these last comments. These questions have been awesome today. Thank you guys so much for being here. You guys are so smart, and you are down with nuance, and you are really, we're really digging into what's, to a big pile of accurate information here, which I'm really excited that there are so many people out there on the internet and that are interested and engaged in politics in this way. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we're all struggling. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store that you can buy things from on my website. Links to both of those things are in the bio. You can also become super fans and subscribers and send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. There are lots of fun ways that you can fund creators on these platforms. And so do whatever it is that you would like to do. If you want to be a super fan on TikTok, if you want to be a sub on Twitch, you actually don't even have to pay any money to be a sub on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can give me a sub for free, and I get like $2 off of that, which is really cool. So shout out to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick, and to my super fans on TikTok, Susie, Sean, Dan, and Hot Sauce. Y'all are goats. Right. If there are any questions that you guys have that I was not able to get to on this live stream or that come up later, do not be shy about reaching out. I want to be a resource for you guys to help you be more informed and to help you be more involved in politics. So if I can do that for you, I want to do that for you. Use me as a resource. Use me and abuse me. Use me until I am all used up. The Discord is my favorite of the platforms because not only can you use that as a way to get in touch, not only can you form a community with other people on that Discord server, but there are threads there for recommendations for books and podcasts, recommendations for work that you can do as a citizen to try to get us out of this fucking quagmire that we are currently in. Yeah, let's see here. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And just lastly, my heartfelt plea that you guys all do the work, because unless we do the work, we are all fucked. So that is the only way that we get out of this, is if we do the work. John868 says, "Who's your favorite comedian?" I have a couple. I love Jeselnik. I love Andrea Jin. I love Kristen Key. I was always a big Sarah Silverman fan. Roy Wood Jr. is great. Joe List is hilarious. Nate Bargatze. There's a whole bunch of them. Jersey Rican says, "I have Amazon Prime. How do I do that?" Do you have a Twitch account, Jersey Rican? Let me know. Muzz King says, "Every time you shout out Twitch reminds me, Yes Man, when she shouts out her fans in the bar." I don't know what that is. I don't know what Yes Man man is. Yeah. That reference went over my head. Jersey Rican says, "Do you have Cash App?" I think I still do. Yeah, I mean, I have Venmo and PayPal and all that shit, but you don't have to do that if you don't wanna. You can be, you can just join the Patreon if you want. Patreon. Then you get some fun stuff if you do. Brother Karamazov says the Gropers movement is growing fast. Do you think he will run in a few years? Probably. And I think we all need to do work, brother, to nip that in the bud. Like, let's make sure that we are reaching out to the young people that we know so that they are not falling into the extreme right wing pipeline. Alrighty, user a bunch of numbers says, "Sorry, Kat, what do you think of anti Pam Bondi? Says she's going to ride us of." Yeah, Kathy, I'm so sorry. I don't understand that, unfortunately. Let's see here. Yeah, Jersey Rican, do it and send me a message if you have any trouble doing that. I really appreciate that. The movie Yes Man. Yes Man. Yeah, no, I don't know about that movie. I'm so sorry, King. Shay McCady says, "How can we regulate congressional pay structure and benefits?" We have to elect people who are willing to do that. One of the issues is that considering that people in Congress need to have two residences, a home where they live and a place that they can sleep in DC, it actually is pretty expensive to work in the government. That's the reason why some people in government go into grifting and some people in government are just like, independently wealthy, and so they can afford to do that kind of shit. So yeah, I think regulating potentially government housing for people that work in government, attaching government pay to things like minimum wage or the median income of people in your district, I think that would be probably really good legislation to get into. But the long and short of this is we just got to elect people who are willing to use their office to help people. And part of helping people is responsibly allocating your own, pay and benefits. All right, Hayfeeholic says, "I don't support Kirk, but why are the left so anti him? I mean, he's open to debates and all that." So, Hayfeeholic, the reason why people like myself disliked Charlie Kirk is because he wasn't a debater. He was a liar. He was a propagandist. He was using the debate format to trick people into thinking that he was right about things. Charlie Kirk would make things up when he was debating people. And if you did not happen to have the very specific statistic memorized that he was currently lying to you about, then he would get away with it. And he would have made up data to support his arguments to then shove into your face. The videos where he gets called out for his lies, the videos where he is, quote unquote, owned in debates, those don't make it onto his channel. And so those don't get elevated in the algorithm. And so people don't see them. I don't think that he was a positive, element in our discourse. I don't think that lying to impressionable college students so that you can indoctrinate them into a far right-wing ideology is something that is a good faith discourse move. I have a problem with everybody that's in the debate sphere, even if you're on the left, because I don't think that the point of political discourse is to win. I think the point is to convince. I think the point is to come to some common ground. There are issues that people bring up to me all the time on this live stream where I'm like, this is how I feel, but if you have information, you could probably convince me to think another way. We were just talking about that on gun control and, Bank of America reporting massive ammunition purchases. I was like, well, this is how I feel, but if you can make a compelling case against it, like, I'm willing to hear it. So yeah, that's kind of like the long version of why we don't like Charlie Kirk. I still don't think that he should have been murdered. Like, that was obviously a fucking tragedy, regardless of how shitty a person is. Nobody deserves extrajudicial killings, whether you are Charlie Kirk, other far right, master debaters, or you are a fisherman off of the coast of Venezuela, and the Trump administration just decides that they're going to murder you for no fucking reason. Alrighty, let's see here. Frew Tattoo says, "Was Kirk killed by Israelis?" No, he was not. He was killed by a fella who it is likely was a groiper. Okay, everybody, I'm out of here. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for all of your support. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. Have an excellent weekend, everybody. And I will see you on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Oh, Triska, I haven't logged off yet. How do I link my Twitch account to my Amazon account? Let me look into that, Triska. I'm not really sure how, without like controlling your screen, I can help you with that. But I'll look into it, and I will send you information if you send me like an email or a message on Discord or something like that. All right, everybody, on